So I'm Mike Eschelbach. I teach at Concordia Irvine for this is 9 years. Before that I was in Chicago for 14 years. And before that I was a parish pastor for 15 years. So that's the short version of my story. I have the handout there. Just give you a quick look at some resources. I know the QR code doesn't work, and my IT guy, also a Concordia Irvine graduate, said something to me about it does work, but I don't know. But the website's good. The website address, Word Without Walls, not words without walls. If you put in Words Without Walls, you get a prison ministry, which I think is probably good, but it's not what I'm doing. Let's pray. Dear Father in heaven, thank you for the blessings of this day, for the bright sunshine, for the wonder of this place and this opportunity to share what we're doing, our experiences, what we know, means of being more effective in extending your kingdom to a world around us that needs it ever more desperately, to bring light into the darkness as we contemplate during this season of Epiphany. Thank you for those who have come here interested in knowing more about world religions and to be more able to have conversations about what we believe that are fruitful and productive, that bring your grace and truth into the lives of others, even as we experience it more fully in our own. So bless our time together, our conversation, for Jesus' sake. Amen. Okay. Also, my card, there's some of my cards on the back. So always, or not always, never hesitate to email me, right? I'll never not email you back. I'll never say, well, so who are you anyway? I'll just say, that's a great question, or let me see if I can connect you with somebody that will help. That's what we like to do. So world religions, I've been teaching world religions at Irvine since I got there. In River Forest, I taught the philosophy of religion, which was a really good background for teaching world religions. So actually, when the students, good to see you. When the students come through the door at the beginning of the semester, I assign them a religion to study in little teams. And then while they're busy doing that, I give them sort of the short form of the philosophy of religion, because our approach to world religions is very opposite of a typical state university approach, right? So all world religion textbooks that I've seen are pretty much the same. They treat world religions like museum artifacts from people and cultures that are frozen in time. Right? Like, we don't actually do that kind of thing anymore, but it's interesting, so to speak. Even my students notice that, how is it that an atheist would author a book on world religions? How would they begin to understand any of the religions they're writing about, since they don't believe any of the religions that they're writing about? That's a good question. The approach with the students, though, of course, is not to treat this like a cerebral museum-ish exercise, but more like training to be a medic, where we actually care about the lives of the people around us. And so we're going to focus on how can we be more helpful to people that we're going to meet as time goes forward. And so that's kind of getting to the essentials of world religions will help us do that. This is if you don't see this, it's not mine. This is a symbol that also you tend to see in stuff that's associated with me. There's lots of different resources here for you, but certainly you can always contact me. And in here's lots of stuff, and I'll probably put, if I remember, or one of you reminds me, I'll put this slide set in there, because I'm happy to share resources with you as I'm able. Yeah, well, come on in, don't worry. Find a seat. The little blue chairs are great because they're closer to the door. So, Katie, can I ask you to read the red ink?
What is the gigantic imposing fear lurking always around this topic? So the conversation either it goes badly or not at all?
So when the subject of world religions comes up, and I used to, well, I still do. On our campus, there's two fears going on, and one of them is that I'm going to give too much away as a LCMS ordained professor pastor. I'm going to give too much away, and so I won't be LCMS anymore. Or the other fear of the students in the classroom is that I'm going to be too LCMS, and anybody that isn't LCMS, that's going to be an issue. So I kind of need to address that right away, so both fears. So in your own mind, what's the big imposing fear lurking when we approach the subject of world religions? Do you have a sense of that? Ignorance. It'll come to that. It's a great person to meet that says, I'm just going to claim ignorance from the start. That just saves a lot of time. So if you're self-aware, that's good. That should be my claim. Other fears, world religions.
Who's right?
Who's right? That's the. There's another one too. But so first fear, right? I'm going to face a question or challenge that I'm unprepared or unable to answer. Yes. My first 18 encounters with Jehovah's Witnesses, right? Like, oh, okay. Or worse, this is the worst one, right? Either they're going to find out they're wrong or I'm going to find out I'm wrong. Either way, this is not something that we're looking forward to. So this is going to be a difficulty. So the reason that I wanted to share this with you, and I shared this at a Higher Things in July, so I think it's working, but it works with my students. We're going to try and bypass or deal with this fear and what's causing it, and in so doing, be better equipped to have these conversations. The retreat from universal witnesses. I'm ashamed to say it wasn't that long ago when I noticed how Psalm 19 referenced creation as a witness, like everybody's witness. Every language around the world through all time. And then I noticed in Romans 1, Paul makes the same reference to nature and creation. And so it occurred to me that this evidence that the atheists are forever wanting, right? So Richard Dawkins in his interview with Ben Stein quotes, what's that other older well-known atheist guy anyway, one of those English, well, Bertrand Russell, maybe, said, God, why did you take such pains to hide yourself? But that universal, constant witness in every single person's life is actually the sun in the sky and the earth beneath your feet and the plants that grow and your heartbeat. And it's everywhere all the time. This stuff doesn't just happen. And so there it is, that you just decided to dismiss all of that. That's why you're not getting it. So, but in the 1800s, right, when intelligent people were trying to keep pace with what was going on in the educated classes, right, when natural philosophy left the queen of the sciences, which was what? Theology. I think now we're like an orphan or something, a homeless person, and renamed it science, right? So all of the upper class people that wanted to stay cool and intelligent had to move with what science was saying, which is that the Bible's not accurate. So none of that actually is accurate or ever happened or is real or any of those things. So that's the first hit. Then in the 60s, right, this is when I was growing up in Ann Arbor, Michigan, of all places, right, intelligent people were asking good questions, like my generation and my older brother's generation. They were asking good questions, like why shouldn't we pursue free love, which is code for free sex, but they weren't getting good answers. I mean, the Sixth Commandment, because the Sixth Commandment, it was not a compelling enough answer to their question, right? And I know this. What does this have to do with world religions? But there's religion going on here, so I'll get to that and explain what I mean. So, first step, second step, abandoning, and then here the world was ready for this third strike, and that was the comparative religions movement. So what does it say? All religions are basically the same, correct? Would you say correct? How many of you say that's right? They got that right, 1963. I wouldn't have until I started teaching these classes. Now I would agree with them, except one. Now we'll get to that too. But it's not the one you're thinking of. Well, let me just check in with you at this moment. How many people understand Christianity to be a moral system? If you're a good enough person, then you go to heaven when you die, correct? Which other world religion doesn't teach that? So on that level, all religions are basically the same. They were right about that. If you're good enough, then you go to heaven when you die. If you're not, then we have different answers for that question. Okay, now, thinking about conversations with people about religion, here's the fear of condemnation, right? So my first fear is that I'm talking with a person who's already condemned what I think or what I believe is wrong. I'm not looking forward to seeing how that goes. The second is indoctrination, right? Those fears is that if I'm around people who don't share my religious commitments or disposition, what's happening is they're trying to get to me, right? They're passing out the Kool-Aid, and it's got a lot of sugar in it, and I'll end up Lutheran if I drink that stuff, right? Or invitation. How do we get to invitation in an apologetic exercise, right? And apologia, of course, a Greek word, right? It's a cool word. There's so many great words in other languages that can be so helpful, right? So what does apologia mean? Apologeo. It's to respond with a word. Right? And that's the idea behind I apologize. Right? What do I mean by that? I'm sorry I was wrong. Here's the cool part. It could also mean I'm sorry you're wrong. But we're going to be sneaky about it. We just say I apologize. Oh, well, we're going to have that disposition a little bit, right? What's wrong with proving my religion is right? It seems like that should be a good thing to do, shouldn't it? I'm going to prove to the world around me that my religion is right. What aren't most people looking forward to?
Knowing that they're wrong.
They're going to find out that they're probably wrong, right? Like, who actually is my religion? I'm going to get to that in a minute, too. But this is what I do with well, I'll get to that. I don't want to get ahead of myself. When I have part of what my students do besides studying a religion, then I ask them to evaluate the religion that they studied, and then I ask them to write an apologetic dialogue. And the reason I want them to do that is there's a number of reasons. One is I want them to think through what a conversation would go like, so that if you ever have a conversation, this isn't the first time you've ever thought through how this might go. That's number one. The second is I tell them you can only ask questions. You're not allowed to point your finger or lecture or any of the sorts of things people are expecting, right? The second thing is, and this is what we do in class. In class, they got their script, and then I'll be the person of the religion that they studied. So here we are sitting on a bus. Hi, I'm Mike. Hi, I'm Jennifer. Okay, and ready, go. So Jennifer asked me her first question. So what do you believe about God as a Hindu? Pretty much same thing you do. Now what's Jennifer going to say? So the first thing I noticed from Jennifer is that I'm already off script. This is 100% of the time. They say what they were going to say, and I did not answer what they thought I would answer. The importance of that lesson is what?
Get them off there. Don't ask the question.
That's okay. What are the two lessons we learned from this, right? Is that you can't script conversations in real life, right? No more than you can cookbook ER room, right? Everybody that comes through the door in ER is not going to respond to some cookbook treatment, right, kind of thing. You have to know principles that allow you to be flexible, okay? But then I'm asking them, when you think about writing this apologetic exercise, this is yet another thing that they learn, is that they are actually trying to prove that the other person's religion is wrong, and by so doing open the door to share their religion, which is right. Okay. What inevitably happens to them, though, and don't tell anybody about this, you can't tell people about this, I don't tell them this until later in the semester, is that as soon as they ask their first question, what do you believe about God, same thing you do, then I reverse the direction and I start asking them question after question after question. At the beginning of the semester, they don't realize what's happening. And then I ask them questions until they don't know the answer. And so now they're in this really uncomfortable place of, I don't know if what I believe is right. Now it's still Concordia and I'm still ordained LCM. It's going to be fine. But I needed you to see that what you thought you knew so much about. Yes? And these are Concordia Irvine students. I mean, they've read the Book of Concord. They know the Small Catechism. They know all about the Trinity. They've heard about their whole lives. But about 3 questions in, she was like in panic mode. Which is the same experience I had when I hired a Jehovah's Witness to work for me. That he really had me going for a while. What you want on your mind is, though, why wouldn't I want other people to join me in my religious belief? Does everybody resonate with that? Presumably, you believe what you do because there's something compelling about it, something wonderful about it, something you wouldn't want anyone else to do without. Like the little kids with the tubs of ice cream treats, right? I wouldn't want any of you not to have a little kid come by with a tray of ice cream treats. So think about it, right? What excites you about your religion, and how would you bring another person to be interested in what it is that's about? So what did FDR say about fear? Nothing to fear but fear itself. So let's see if we can move past the fears and make a positive way. So, worldviews are in the background. 2 years ago, I spent my time here on worldviews. How many of you in the room are familiar with these worldviews? My daughter is. Yeah. Noah's good to see you. Okay, there are podcasts on this in my website and some writing about it, but what you think religiously is a function of your worldview. Most people's worldview is one-dimensional, which has collapsed into a body in a material world in time, right? And so that tends to be also how they think religiously. In other words, the purpose of religion is to find the best possible way to get the best possible results from God. And what do we want from God? Help me get what I want when I want it more than anyone else, right? Interesting, isn't it, that every religion that I know of always builds structures? You ever notice that? Irvine has I don't know how many millions of dollars went into this Buddhist temple. And the interior of it, and the number of Buddhist statues and images on the inside of it, it is powerful. It's a fantastic aesthetic experience. From people who are devoted, from an enlightened teacher who said that the material world is an illusion. Okay. Well, Jesus said, my kingdom's not of this world, so we got to be careful that we're not too hard on the Buddhists. But in the end, it's a bottle, right? Every religion is building a bottle, and who's in the bottle? The genie, right? God is the genie in the bottle. If you rub your religion just right, then the genie gives you what you want. That's right. Which is why it's important that I not find out I'm wrong, isn't it? Because then what happens to my expectations or my hope of achieving what I'm looking for? Okay, just in brief, the Bible presumes a 3-dimensional model, body, soul, spirit. The soul is the essence of who you are, not the body. This is soul regenerate. It's everlasting. It's this kind up. God is at the bottom of the structure, not the top. God supports and provides for all things living and so forth. So that's a little bit why the formatting on the screen and the colors. Okay. So, which is more disarming? So we're interested, first of all, in laying down arms. Have you ever noticed the language, apologetic language, or what you hear people say when they're talking about engaging with other people that they assume they disagree with? Is it the language of medicine or the language of war? You hear all kinds of words, but it sounds like war, not like peace, not like medicine, right? So to attack someone as an adversary with shock and awe, should that be our world religions class? We'll arm you up with all the things you need to say to bury your opponents, and you win. Probably not. What is or are the perils of an apologetic attack? So I mentioned that. That's what my students were assuming they should do, right? Attack. Ask the questions that you know the other religion is wrong about. What they think about God is wrong. What they think about life and death is wrong. What they think about life after death is wrong. So ask them about those questions, and you'll expose them, you'll defeat them, and then you win. Except that none of them have been able to do that. And then it gets really uncomfortable. So that's this experience from my students. Here's an approach that they're not expecting, but it has good pedigree here. And that from a person who was into shock and awe, correct? Yeah, Saul, the rabbi, right? So agree with someone as an advocate. Is that a scary proposition? I'm having a conversation with a person of a different religion, and I'm going to agree with them? Should we be nervous about that? Well, in my upbringing, that makes me nervous to think about agreeing with people I don't agree with, right? But why not be nervous about this? What am I saying here? Agree with someone as an advocate. And think about Paul. Paul in Acts 17, right? He's provoked by all the idolatry in Athens, yes? And so how does he begin his conversation with the Athenians? Yeah, he doesn't start out with saying, man, you guys are idolatrous and the hammer's coming. No, he says, I see you're religious in every way. Me too. Right? That's a fantastic beginning. So that's what I mean with, you can always find things with other religions, a starting place, an entryway. This is something we agree about. Like Taoism is death on formal education. When I found that, I was like, yes! Where was I when I was why didn't I have Taoist parents? Okay, so starting point. Can agreement adjust to appreciation? Even if I don't agree with some, is it possible for me to appreciate? Yes. How about Roman Catholicism and the teaching that the Pope can speak authoritatively for God? Isn't that a fantastic teaching, an idea? Wouldn't it be great if we had absolutely God's honest answer to any question or issue that we would bring? We asked the Pope spoke ex cathedra, bam, done. That's it. Now, that's a different question than is that actually actual? Is that how it works? But the idea is fantastic, right? I think getting bit by a spider and turning into Spider-Man is a fantastic idea. I was bit and no powers. I was so disappointed. So, and what is the value of advocacy and what the risk? So now we're going to think of other people in terms of advocacy. The more we disagree with them or suspect we do, the more we think in terms of advocacy. What's the value of that? What's the risk? Value of advocacy.
Well, the value would be that you're creating a non-confrontational beginning with them.
Right. We're going to make
them on your side.
And you're establishing common ground.
Say that again. Getting them on.
Oh, she just said common ground.
Oh.
You're sorry.
Now, don't feel bad. I put foot in mouth all the time. But that's what I'm... See how it's there? On my side. Okay. Now, what's the risk? So let's say that for number one, this is going to take time, yes? right? I'm not going to turn the next person into a Lutheran in 15 minutes or less, right? Or even in an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours, right? And why is that? I tend to think that, at least we were raised with this notion that we're just in a hurry, right? And we got other things to do, but we have this Great Commission thing, so we need to make disciples of all nations, but how soon can we get on to the next thing, right? And we like to check boxes, and, it's a metric, right? But friendship first, right? The value of advocacy, so establishing rapport. I'm sorry?
If you want to create influence, you need relationship first.
Yes, relationship. That's right. Relationship first. Very good. One of the reasons the students give me when I ask them, so why do you believe what you do? Right. The most common reason is for what you believe is what? How did you come to believe the things you believe? Your parents raised you. That's how you know it's right. Right? And that's what everybody from every other religion says. So now what? Okay. But how long did your parents spend doing that? It wasn't in a minute conversation or 15 minutes. It was year after year after year after year, right? Okay. So advocacy. So I'm going to have a friend that I'm going to keep. Yes, is there value to that? And I don't know how long this will take. So I had the second angriest student ever about 5 years ago. So angry. First day of New Testament, and I'm talking about how you know the New Testament is a reliable text. And he actually guffawed out loud, oh my God, give me a break. And all. So he was absolutely sure this was the stupidest class he's ever going to take. About 5 weeks later, he's my best student. And to this day, oh yeah, I got to tell you this other side. I found out that he was a veteran. It's because he was older than the other students. He was also African American. So I went to see our Veterans Affairs guy. I said, can you tell me something? I'm just trying to get a little background here. And he said, oh, just Google his name. So I went home, I Googled his name, and a picture comes up in an article about a protest against, there was a KKK march in LA. Now that on its own, I'm like, what? But anyway, and so here he is trying to pull an American flag out of the hands of a KKK person. And I thought, well, I think I'd try to get that flag away from him too. So I don't see what's so bad about this fellow. But anyway, he was turned out to be, Nation of Islam, right? Black Muslims, Malcolm X and that whole thing. So I don't think he has joined me in the LCMS yet. But he has come light years from where he was. And the most important thing, I think, is that he does believe that there's something in the Bible and in the incarnation of the Son of God that's worth learning about. So we're still having conversations, right? That's great. What's the risk? What would we be afraid of? The deep kind of in the back of your mind. If I become really good friends with this Nation of Islam guy, I'm going to become Nation of Islam guy. Now, that's back to should we be afraid of talking about the witness of nature with scientists? Should we be afraid of talking about what the Bible actually teaches in terms of gender and human sexuality and design and that? Should we be afraid? Or should we actually be confident, right? Ultimately, God's witness is going to prevail. We just got to hang. So if we come alongside the scientists and say, well, let's keep looking at what the data tells us, right? Social issues, let's keep looking at what human experiences and what we've learned and so forth. So I don't actually think we're at risk for becoming what the other person is. And just a particular example, so my second parish, I followed a split, and the split was over my predecessor making sure that any Roman Catholics out there knew that they were not saved. And lots of the members had Roman Catholic spouses. So is it ever fun to follow that? Super fun. So, of course, a lot of people had on their minds, Pastor, my wife doesn't come to church with me anymore because of your predecessor, so what do you say about that? What should we think about Roman Catholics, and what should we do about it? So I told this husband in this particular example, I want you to go home and be the best Roman Catholic your wife ever met. He was like, what? Isn't that backwards advice, Pastor? I said, no, think about it. Right? Your wife's assumptions are everything she's going to hear from you and me is going to try and talk her out of the religion of her family, her parents, her childhood, and into yours. That's a terrifying prospect. She might face she might be yeah, that. Because this is where the Roman Catholic grandmas get involved, right? When they wield some serious power in these families. And so I said, but think about it. If you become a better Roman Catholic than your wife is Roman Catholic, maybe better than her family, maybe better than her grandmother, then aren't you able to ask some important questions that you couldn't have asked before? Like, I'm in this. I'm all in with you, but I don't understand how this thing works. So now what do we do about it? So a year and a half later, he was back with his wife, and we were on our way, right? Because that's just what you get. You get to look at the truth when you have a relationship with someone. That's fantastic. Okay. Yes, you can ask.
Common ground. What Acts 17 move do you make with an atheist?
Oh yeah, I'm getting to that. This is so great. No, you anticipated it. No, that's good. That's good. Because
just share one thing.
Yeah, sure.
The value. You get ownership. I've had a 30-year relationship with my Buddhist friend. It's cost me thousands of dollars eating at his restaurant. But I like his food. And I go late so that we can talk afterwards. And I've read tons of Buddhist literature, and some of it's great, and so when you're able to say, yeah, that's great. And finally, we get to the point where, he really is just a philosopher, the guy says. He would never make the claims of Jesus. But it took me 6 years of that relationship to get him to say, I enrolled my kids in the Christian school 2 weeks before the principal told me, oh no, that's not for Buddhists. Your kids can't attend. With tears coming down.
Yeah. Right.
So it's taken time to rebuild that and to get any kind of audience for Jesus.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It takes time, especially because you don't know, the backstory. Yeah. So world religions like what? How many world religions are there? Whoa, look at big eye going. Yep. Okay. How about number one? Yes? Yes. Right? I have students in the room, former students. I have a seminary classmate, at least one in the room, and other ordained friends. Do you suppose that our theologies are identical? No. Right? I don't think there will be cats in heaven. No way. Okay. So everybody's right. And this is, I have the students read at least 2 chapters in a typical world religions textbook. They have to read the chapter on the religion that they were assigned to compare to what the person said that they interviewed. Then they have to read the chapter on the religion they claim, which is typically Christian. I said, did you recognize anything about what you believe in that chapter? Nope. And yet, where did you get that information? You got it from people who said they were Christians. I'll tell you what Christianity teaches. Okay, there's another answer. That's a standard world religions textbook. There are 9 of them. Right? How did you make the big 9? It has to do with how old the religion is. It has to do with how many people claim the religion. It has to do with some kind of substantial body of literature, right? Religious text, something there. Those three, then you're in. Otherwise, you're sort of an outlier. Like the textbooks will usually go on to give a page or two information about other lesser known religions, like Rastafarianism. Like, how could you not be an advocate of Rastafarianism, right? Yeah, reggae and marijuana. Like, what a sacrament. Okay. Just two? Just two religions.
That's what Pieper says.
Pieper.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Pieperism. There's 10 religions. 10. Just two? What are they?
Religion of the law and religion of the gospel, right?
Either you save you, or God saves you. That's it. It's one or the other, right? And it doesn't matter if you say, well, yeah, God does that last little bitty thing that I can't do for myself. Well, that's still you save you then. It has to be start to finish, God saves you. Here's where the witness of nature comes in. We should use this, right? How many of you are responsible for your own conception? Except for Marty McFly, right? Well, what if you were responsible for just the last little, right? That last little part of your DNA, you got those together. Now we're cooking, right? It doesn't work that way. How much did you even have to do with the gestation period? That was helpful. I mean, I know you're making trouble for your mom, but okay, so look at, in fact, I started doing this with my students, you might find this helpful too, is have them make a list of all of the things that their life depends on that they don't have anything to do with. And it's shocking to them. Because, you know, college students, they all love to tell you how independent they are. So, oh, really? As a father of 4, I don't know something about that. And you can start with the obvious, the sunshine, right? Earth turns, gravity, all those sorts of things. But then get down to, does the water come out of the faucet when you... Do you know how many people it takes to, and what a history it is? That didn't just show up this way. Okay, so God saves you or you save you, and then just one actually. And this gets cycled back to the atheist question a little bit. Just one. Does anyone actually save themselves? No. Is everyone actually dependent on God and His grace and love and providence for their lives? Right? Paul did say God makes it rain on the unjust, right? So actually everybody's life depends on the same. And for how many people did Jesus die? Are you sure about that? Everybody? God, yeah.
Doesn't make you question that. The people that did.
I know. Isn't it just gonna? You get to heaven, yeah. Abraham Lincoln, yup.
Jeffrey Dahmer.
I was gonna say that other Osama bin Laden. Like, wait a minute. I don't know. Anyway.
That
Okay.
opens up the whole thing, though, on the cross. You know,
Yeah, we're not gonna get into that. Who is religious, who's not, and why, and how do you know? So I'm so grateful. I almost always have at least one atheist in my classroom, and they're so shocked when I get excited and grateful. Like, because now I don't have to pretend to be you all semester long. You can be you, and we're interested in your voice in the classroom. Second of all, a larger group will say that they're not religious. Why is that? You probably know why. Why spiritual, not religious? That's very popular now. Spiritual, not religious. I think I have it in one of these maybe. Yeah, here. Because what is the history of religion if you read history? You know, war, conflict, bloodshed, all this sort of stuff, right? Everybody knows those kinds of things, right? That's what they're trying to do. I don't want to be associated with that kind of thing. How many Lutheran synods are there in the U.S.? I think there's 30-some, 36 last time I checked, 36. So if you say you're Lutheran, what might another person assume? Oh, you're the Lutheran of the Lutheran hospital that provides abortions, yes? Or you're the Lutherans of the other Lutheran group that, I don't know, blow up abortion clinics? Where are you on the thing, right? So we can be sympathetic. This is where we begin being sympathetic. You're not religious, me neither. Okay? Define religion now. This is when things get helpful. What does religion mean? The students always write something about a system of beliefs with an organized group. I love that one, organized. Because I said, I'm LCMS. We are not organized. Okay. But you get the template, right? But that's too narrow, right? Because we're not the only ones who are organized around an ideology, correct? It's not Marx, it's Marxism, right? And so what does religion mean? Put a LY behind it. What does religion mean? Do any of you do things religiously? Mm-hmm.
Once in a while on Sunday when I feel like it.
That's your secondary religion. So religiously, so we can actually common ground. Everyone's religious. Why is that? Because we're all contingent beings, right? We're dependent beings, and that we are a mass of appetites and needs and a history of experiences. There's so much going on with us that it almost was predictable what is going to govern your life. So I ask the students to think, what governs? That is what religion means, and so necessarily everyone's religious. That's the first step. Is it knowable or not? That's the next important step. I'll get to that in a minute. The history of every ism, this is important for the students to grasp too. Okay, so yes, the history of what we know as religious systems is full of violence and bloodshed. Not true of atheist systems, correct? So I did this, I have a slide for my students, but if you look up genocides in history, and it's a long list. And look how many of them are atheistic systems, right? Political systems, okay. So that kind of levels the playing field too. And so 19th century begins the perfect storm, the last desperate push of human ego to achieve justified dismissal of God. So my holdout atheist student this semester says he's in control of his life. So I said, so you are religious. You're not atheist, you're theist. Who is God? You are. You are. And that is the nature, that's the C here on the body, a body corrupt. That is the nature of the corruption from Adam, is it not? I make a better God than God. Who doesn't think? Every 2-year-old knows this, right? Okay. So this is fantastic exercise. It's the fourth of 4 little entrance exams I give the world religions students, and they never see this coming. But here they get to answer some questions that will compare what they say they believe with what actually governs their life, right? And this is the one that gets us where we want to be. What do you always have money, time, and energy for, especially when you don't have any money, time, or energy, which is often in a student's life, right? It's not God. It's not prayer. It's not any of those kinds of things. It's coffee, pizza, video games, right? So this is very uncomfortable for them to tease that out. And it's the beginnings of recognizing that we have these two dynamics in our lives, right? We have a body and we have a soul. And they're two different sets of forces at work. And like Paul said, these things are contrary to each other. So you can see there's some other categories here that are important, but one of them is, right, what problems do you see in the world? Are they even thinking about a solution to those problems? Does their religious system offer a solution to those problems? So what's governing and how does that all work out? Okay, back to the two religions, either you save you or God saves you. And this is this interesting moment where most people think that Christianity is inclusive or exclusive. Well, traditional Christianity, right? Exclusive. You're not a member until you're a member. Yes? Now currently, with a rainbow flag and everybody's welcome, and I don't know what that is. That's sort of a Thomas the Tank Engine approach to Christianity. But then you lose the Christianity thing. Okay, so let's start on this side of the equation. Interestingly, at the system level, right, it's the world religions that are all exclusive. You don't achieve enlightenment as a Buddhist until You achieve enlightenment. Nobody's going to give that to you, and you're going to recycle and recycle and recycle till you get it, right? You haven't achieved perfection as a Confucianist until you have achieved perfection. So you're out until you're in, right? At the individual level, you only get included in as much as you get yourself there. Here's the awesome thing that seems to be a well-kept secret, is at the system level. Now, what the heck is Christianity X? Well, I thought Malcolm X sounded cool, so why not Christianity X? Like, what is that? And I needed a way to use the word Christianity without the students assuming they know what I'm talking about, right? So, biblical, Orthodox, Apostolic, Greek and Hebrew Christianity. Okay, we just did this. Who did Jesus redeem? Everybody. Now, some of you may have known that as objective justification, subjective justification, right? What's the best way to keep people from benefiting from objective justification? Start with subjective justification, right? Because then you never get out of that. It's like this hamster wheel, right? The human ego is so powerful to trap you in this thinking about myself all the time, right? And so if we reverse that and start with, what is the good message? The good message is all of this monergism that's going on, all of these things that God has done for you. What does the word praise even mean? Psalm 78, praise, that is to say, to tell the wonderful things that God has done. How long would that take you to share with another person all the things that God has done for them before you ran out of things to tell them that God has done for them? Man, that'd take a long time. A person might say, Jesus, isn't there any bad news in you? Yeah, we'll get around to that. But first, right, context. Yes? And think about the medical model, because that tends to be a good model. How full of power, how full of content is a hospital to help and to restore people's health? Is the hospital empty or full? It's full of people, it's full of equipment, it's full of chemicals, it's tons of stuff, everything in there that gives you hope. Yes, when you come through the doors, I'm going to survive this thing, right? That's the energy and the encouragement there. On an individual level, here's the thing. You're only excluded by a relentless, fierce, obstinate contradiction. So with my atheist students, it doesn't matter whether you believe in Jesus or not, does it? He still redeemed you from the curse of the law. He still loves you. And he's a long game kind of Savior, right? So chances are, before you, in fact, you know that thing about atheist philosophers. Where's the one that actually died atheist? Have you researched that at all? What I read about that is there is yet to have been a philosopher that died atheist. And interestingly, now I got to put some distance here so you don't misunderstand me. Billy Graham. He's a God saves you or you save you. Yes, that's the confusing thing about Billy Graham, right? Tell you all these wonderful things about God and Jesus and so forth, and then that could be yours if you meet the standard, right? If you do whatever he's expecting you to do. Billy Graham published a magazine called, what the heck? Okay, now how many of you were born because you decided? Mom, it's time, I'm coming out. Mom, kind of, okay. But I did read about Billy Graham in the last stages of his life before he passed away, and he reversed all those things. He went to, oh yeah, because dying will do that to you, right? It is true, and even in pastoral experience, I can't tell you how many times I have ministered to members or non-members who had no use for me or for the church or God or anything until I got to their hospital room, right, as their surgeon left and just gave them the news, right? Boy, they are all ears at that point. It's fantastic. It's such a great place to be. Okay, now what about the whole world religion thing? Here we go. All religions except for one have at least a second chance system, right? most Eastern religions you're familiar with, what's the second chance? If you die and you didn't get it right? Yeah, it's actually better than second chance, yes? It's how many chances? Infinity chances. Awesome. That sounds cool, doesn't it? It sounds great until you put it in perspective. So I asked the students, how many of you would like to graduate with a perfect score all through all your classes, all 4 years of score? Perfect score. Yes. Good. You can stay here until you do that. Just retake the test, and actually, no thank you. Okay. What about Christianity? Second chance. Well, let's go to Roman Catholicism. Second chance. Purgatory. What about the rest of Christianity? There's a second chance. Rapture. That's why that's so popular. Right? People, right? The human ego is looking for that last desperate, this is where I will. So maybe I didn't get it quite right, but I'll get it there. Only one doesn't have a second chance system. This Christianity X in a green arc world. Why doesn't Christianity have a second chance system? Because it doesn't need one. Isn't that fantastic? It's fantastic. Okay, so let's think about things that other systems have right. So this is where we can begin to agree. I don't have to start with why Buddhism or Confucianism or Jainism is wrong. Let's start with why it's right. The caste system. That's only in India, right? America has no caste system. I live in Southern California. I bicycle past the caste system every day. Gated community, right? $50 million houses. I see the lower caste, the landscape people, right? And I see all the castes in between, right? We're just less honest about it, kind of thing. Okay, Buddhism. You know the Four Noble Truths. Which one of them isn't true? There is suffering. There's a cause of suffering, right? There's a remedy for suffering. There's escape. Yes? Right? What did Buddha teach? What's the cause of suffering? Desire. That's a function of your ego, right? He's right about that, isn't it? If you quit wanting stuff all the time, then even in traffic, if you quit wanting so badly to be somewhere else, no problem. Okay, Jainism, no harm, good idea? Sure. Sikhism, honest and protective. That's interesting. Sikhism, that's a combination of Hinduism and Islam. Sikhism. Taoism, Wu Wei, no effort. How many things have you put how much effort into in your life that you wasted your time at? Lawns. I think lawns. Confucianism, oh man, right? Aesthetics. Where did aesthetics go, right? Beauty, right? Shinto, an ideal of excellence, right? Because that's kind of Shinto is a function of Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism. 5 pillars of Islam, it's genius, isn't it? Don't you think? It's genius. There is no God but God. How many of you can recite the Athanasian Creed? Or Nicene even maybe is tough, right? Okay, so, but these other pillars, the simplicity of it. Charity. Right, and you got to give Muhammad credit. How does charity in Islam work? 10% every year of your
2.5% of your gross worth.
Of your
Gross
worth, not your income. Woohoo! Right now we're tapping into some serious numbers here, right? And so it kind of diminishes your interest in accumulating, right? Because somebody's going to keep. Didn't Israel have that every 7 years? Reset. That's genius, right? They should have kept that. Okay. Judaism, value of heritage, and so forth. Christianity, as most people know it. This is where we have to be careful, right? Christianity is most people know it. God saves you or you save you. And God saves you more precisely. God gives you what you want in this life because He likes you better than everybody else because of how you know Him, correct? You're on the inside. That's how it works. Okay. Now, here's where things begin to make more sense, right? Isn't it wrong, isn't it fundamentally wrong to be selfish? But if you are being a good person in order to save yourself, isn't everything you're doing corrupted by selfishness? I'm only doing this because it's what I need to do to get where I want to be, kind of thing. And there's no escape for that anywhere, not even in Christianity as most people know it. So, what's morality? What happens to morality when I'm doing it in order to save myself? Well, you know what happens to it. You migrate from 10 commandments to 613, correct? We just did this, right? Sundays, you hear the lessons? Last Sunday, you have heard that it was said. So they lowered the standard so they could claim to keep. But I say to you, back and forth, right? Okay. It's very different if you've already been saved. There's nothing to get. There's nothing to except to share with other people. Now that's a very different moral thing. I'm trying to. So it's the difference between somebody telling you, say, you can't swim, you're drowning, and I'm a religious authority, and I told you that you have to help these other people who are drowning. How's that going to work? I'm going to make you feel bad about it, right? And somehow you collected 5 of these flotation devices, and I'm going to expect you to tithe out of that. I want you to start giving away some of your float. It doesn't make any sense at all. It's very different if someone had saved your life when you were drowning, and you were so impressed with that experience that you decided to do what? I'm going to train to be a lifeguard. Now why are you out there swimming to the next person? Because you have to become a lifeguard? Or because you know, right? Somebody taught you how to be a lifeguard, and because you were inspired to save the next thing. Completely different dynamics going on here. Okay. So this easy memory tool, right?
Yeah.
This is you save you. I think this is very LCMS. Like Bagheera, everything's a problem for Bagheera all the time. Yeah, I like Baloo's awesome, isn't he? They just, yeah, man. Okay. So anyway, you can kind of get the gist of that slide. I want to get onto it. This took a long time, not only to make, but to come to. So we're back to all religions are basically the same. Yes, let's say. How so? Right here. Right? Where do all the religions overlap? What is this space? The moral law, right? Around the world through all of history, right? Any anthropologist will tell you all people have essentially the same moral code, because it just makes sense, right? It just makes sense. And it's built in. We know that from Romans and otherwise. Now, interestingly, there are aspects of each religion that is unique to the religion, correct? Okay, that's worth paying some attention to. But there are features in religions that look and sound a lot like features from other religions. So it's important to pay attention to that, even in these sorts of places, right? Okay, so there's a lot to learn about how much the same different religions are. But how come there's no... And don't get me wrong. I did this before I knew what was happening to the rainbow. And it's okay. I'm okay having a conversation. I mean, what if somebody accused me of being pro whatever that means? I would say, well, you tell me what that means, and then we'll go from there, right? That would be okay, right? So this is the whole Christianity X thing, where contrast that you have to do something in your religious system, and you can't do things in your religious system with the New Testament Jesus teaching that you can't have to. It's sort of it's a jarring phrase, but it works, right? You can't, as soon as you think you have to do it, now you're not in Christ's Christianity anymore. You're back in some other religious system, because someone has already done those things for you, right? And think about how often this occurs in our language, right? Do you have to go to church on Sunday? Do you have to stay for communion? Do you have to be baptized? Do you have to be confirmed? Do you have to put something in the offering plate? Look at how far it goes. Do you have to go to Lenten services? Do those count? It's not Sunday. Okay. Counted with my dad. Okay. Fundamental. So now, let's say we're having the conversation. I've had time to come alongside my neighbor to study his or her religion with them, to learn lots of things, to see where they're right, to ask questions about things I don't understand. Okay. But now we're going to get to a place where every other religion is exhausted. Right? So you asked about the atheist. So these are fundamentals. This is a pretty well-known list here, but epistemology. We can come to agreement with anyone about epistemology. In other words, what do you accept as a basis for knowing things? The Bible's not going to work for my atheist friend. That's okay, right? We got nature. Yes? So my atheist friend. So what can we learn rather quickly? Nature displays reliability, correct? Constancy. So constant that scientists call it the what of nature? The laws of nature. How can you call something a law when there's no lawmaker? When there's no law sustainer? When there's no explanation for why everything goes on as constant as it does, right? So there must be someone or something that all of this physical universe depend on. That's one. Let's call it God. And it's not me. Correct? So that's a good place. Now we're making progress. Now we're not independent, are we? We're interdependent. Yes? Here's a very powerful argument for valuing human life, no matter what. How do you know how much your life is going to depend on the next person? How do you know that the next person is going to be the one that discovers a solution for what you're dying from? Right? That's a super powerful motivator here. If the Bible works, great. Right? Then we got to talk about anthropology, because if we don't agree on anthropology, we're not going to be able to get to God. Let's go back to my Jehovah's Witness friends. Yes? According to Jehovah's Witnesses, do you have the power to do what God requires to save yourself? Yes, you do. And Jacob Arminius and lots of other people thought that, right? Pelagianism, semi-Pelagianism, can't talk today. What's that other thing? Synergism, right? Okay, so as long as you're sure that you can do what has to be done, that does change your notion of God, does it not? What gives Jehovah's Witnesses the liberty to argue that Jesus was not God? Do they need him to be God? They don't need him to be God. He's an example? Sure. Right? He's an inspiration? Absolutely. But it's on me. So there you go. Right? So until we get our anthropology right, that I am dying and I can't stop what's happening. There's the witness of nature again, right? If so physically, not more so spiritually, then we can have a conversation about God. But this is where everything stops for all of the other religions, including Christianity as most people know it. Where are the sacraments in most people's practice of Christianity? They're absent, are they not? Well, they're different, right? Coffee, donuts, okay, those kinds of things. So here's the other four of the big seven, right? What other system has an incarnation of God? And it has a trinity behind it, so it's incomprehensible, but there it is, right? This is quite fantastic. Nothing else like... It's not like the Roman, Greek mythology thing, right? Where Zeus is always coming around making trouble and stuff. It's not like that, right? So you have the incarnation of the Son of God. This is look at this one, right? The vicarious atonement, the substitution, yes? So I'll take not just your place, but how many people's place? Everybody's place. And then, if that wasn't enough to tell you about it, remember when you get to see it happening on trial with Pontius Pilate? What happens? Pilate could turn Jesus loose. They have that tradition. No, not Jesus. Barabbas. There's look at that. It happened in real time and space. Right? And then, how do I know that actually worked? I got a resurrection from the dead. It actually begins before that, right? Because his body did not see decay. Why is that? Because there's nothing wrong with him. right? It's not going to decompose. And then this one's fantastic. Even, I mean, these three would be king size, but this one's even more king size. Right? This is like the whack-a-mole of doubt. Right? Well, I don't think so, yes. How do I know? Because this is the objective means, right? How many of you have ever had doubts about whether you're a Christian or not, whether you're going to go to heaven when you die? Come on. I know you're Lutheran and everything, but right? So that's the point of the objective means, right? You don't have to figure it out. There are people in your life who will assure you or warn you, yes? Pastors do this, wives do this, children, parents, but the sacraments, were you baptized or not? So you have a birthright. Are you receiving the body and blood of Jesus or not? That, right? Are you hearing the word of God or not? Because it doesn't return void. Have you heard absolution or not, kind of thing? Okay, so this is something you have a conversation with people about when? After you've walked their religion with them as far as their religion can take you. Yes? Is there anything else? Okay, so this is where the conversation changes. Well, yeah, there's the Acts 10 thing. Now, one thing I do with my students then at the end of the semester, after we've had a chance to appreciate all these different things because they're right, is to say they're here in the Bible. Jesus taught these things and a little more, right? So Islam, how often a day should you pray? Jesus, New Testament teaches without ceasing. It's cool, isn't it? 2.5% of your income. Mormons, the other one I'm thinking about, 2 tithes. Yes, one goes to Salt Lake City, one goes to your local church. What's the New Testament say about your material things? It's all in, right? I'm a steward of these things. I don't own anything. I'm a steward. I'm a caretaker, and so forth, right? So this is a fantastic experience for students to realize, oh, it's not that they're wrong, they're right, and it's here too. But remember, it doesn't have these, whoops, it's missing these things. Okay, so then we come back to those things. So good, because we'll have time for questions and conversation. So through the course of this semester and the students practicing this apologetic thing, first thing that I get them to realize is, don't let me turn the conversation around. You can, I know you want to answer my questions because that's how the ego works, but just say, I'm happy to do that, but not yet. I need to know about your religion first. The second thing is not to attack, but to surrender, essentially, right? So the first time I got somewhere with the Jehovah's Witnesses, first 18 times, right? Look, John 1, verse 1, verse 14. Who's Jesus? Small a God. What? Yeah, that's what it says in their Bible with the little brackets around the A, and why is that? It's so frustrating. I have a PhD in hermeneutics. I read the Bible in Greek. I know how Greek works. This is how it works. Nope. Jehovah's Witness, that is not what it says. Okay. All right. The 19th time. 2 nice ladies on Newport Beach. It's fantastic. The little Jehovah's Witness thing. Say, hi, I'm Mike, and you're Jehovah's Witnesses, right? Like, what? No, it says, yeah. You're Jehovah's Witnesses. Okay, yeah. So what happens to me when I die? And they said, well, now, then they want to change the subject, right? Because I'm off script, right? So what happens to me when I die? And this is the thing. This is what I mean about put yourself in their system. Now it's your responsibility. My life is your responsibility. It's easy to talk theology when there are no stakes, right? It's easy to go to Vegas and bet with some stack of chips that some hotel gave you when it's not your chips. So what happens to me when I die? And they said, well, if you're a good person, you'll go to heaven when you die. I said, yeah, that's the problem. I am not a good person. You're like, what? Off script. Okay, so they, they got it together. They said, well, if you wanted to be a good person, that would be enough. Yeah, a problem there. I don't want to be a good person. Well, if you could like try and be sincere about wanting to be a good person. Like, nope. So there it is, right? How long did that take to exhaust their system? Your system can't save me. And I'm being honest about that. I am not a good person. I know it every day at the end of the day. It's just like, how did that all happen again? I'm not going to share you what happened yesterday. I was tempted to, but I don't want to. It's too embarrassing. But anyway, so when you, and I don't need to tell you the rest of that story, but that is what begins to open the door. Well, I don't actually know how to answer that question. Is there an answer to that question? And then I wouldn't say, yes, Book of Concord, here you go. I wouldn't even maybe say yes, right? Because I might say, well, there might be, right? Can we be that humble? Well, there might be, right? I've heard about this, right? I've heard about this. And notice I've heard about this is a little less, confrontational, right? Here's this thing over here. So I have a former student from Chicago, Nathaniel Zabodi, who's a missionary in Chad, and I've seen pictures of this. He tells stories. Muslims tell their stories, he tells his stories. What are those? Those are Sunday school, right? But I've also heard from other people that Muslims in Chad come looking for him. It's amazing. Where's this man that tells the stories? That's fantastic. So that's how you want things to be. Now, if we had time and we don't, but I did bring something to know about though. Anthology of World Scriptures. This is worth owning. It's not super expensive, but it's religion by religion, kind of category by category. Some very smart people have taken excerpts out of these world religion texts. It is absolutely invaluable. When I have the students read these things, they're just blown away, right? In lots of different ways. Sometimes you can hear or see a biblical revelation behind this. People had ideas. They got ideas from, oral traditions or whatever, travelers, caravans and all that sort of thing. And then there are things that are just impossible. Like, no way. And that's okay to look at that too, kind of thing. But I'm gonna stop here and just let you ask questions or whatever, right? Conversation. That was me for too long.
Slide about 3 ago. Was it now?
Oh, this one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you going to post these slides?
Yes.
Or can we give you an email and have you email it to us?
One, the short story, yeah, if you email me, I will send this to you. Two, I will try to remember to put it in the resources in the website. Four, I think that, because they're recording this BPM, I think I can ask them to have this, and they can make it available however they do it in their mystical ways. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, happy to share this with you.
Doing all that will earn your way into heaven too.
Actually, I'm afraid about the opposite. Like, I don't want God to say, so what's the stuff you taught about the other religion? Like, President Thomas made me do that. Was it? Questions, comments, conversation?
Thank you.
Oh yeah, sure. Yep. Okay. So one last tip, and you're welcome to go or stay however you like, but when I was visiting people in the hospital, I realized quickly about these IVs, how kind of nonchalantly you can get a hold of the IV, and if you crimp it, you get people's attention in a hurry. My students are like, whoa. Just kidding. Never do that. But anyway, thank you, and God bless you in your care for other souls. Yeah.